Good afternoon and welcome to the tea table. I am so happy you've joined me today. And I want to invite you to look at the most beautiful rose. This is a Queen Elizabeth rose, and I have it on my little tea tray today. And my tea tray is quite different today, but what I wanted to show you was the most special pot. I looked through my house. I thought we need something special today, something different, and I found this lovely pot. I have never used it. It was a gift, and it is the beautiful Dutch girl, all dressed with her flowers, and it's a teapot. And I thought, let's have tea with her. And then I thought, okay, here is a little tiny cup. This is actually a Demitasse cup. It's so fragile. It is made in Germany, and it has the beautiful dancing girls in the spring. So we will proceed with having a cup of tea together. And I remind you, if you have not gotten yours yet, you can pause the video and go get your tea, and I'll be right here waiting for you. And I thought for the little cream pitcher, these aren't really matching today, but I went in my little cabinet that I have German, Austrian, and Eastern European china, which I think we talked about it one time, that it is quite different than the English china. And this little teapot is from Czechoslovakia, and it's green. I love it. And so I am going to proceed, and I'm going to proceed to pour out. If I can do this with this little pot, we will try. This is really unique. I've never had one quite like that. And if you want to have one more peek at her, isn't it lovely? Reminds me of when I was a little girl. They used to make cakes for the birthday and put a doll in the middle, and then the birthday girl got to keep the doll. And it's sort of that concept. So here is my little cup of tea, which probably this would be generally used for coffee or very strong tea, which my tea is quite strong today. And I'll put a little splash of milk. Now, some people like cream, some people like sugar. I just like a little splash of milk. Now let's see what it's like. Very good, very strong, very brisk. And it is good black British tea. Well, this rose is the Queen Elizabeth rose. I have it in a very old vintage vase. And I don't know what you call this vase, but it's just curls out to hold one rose. And this rose has a very strong scent, which is rare now. And, you know, when my daughter Elizabeth was born, I had dear friends that gave her and us 2 beautiful Queen Elizabeth rose bushes. And so that is where that is from. Now, when we're having tea, I was thinking, generally we don't just have tea, do we? Here are some lovely scones that my friend gave me today, and I thought I want to share them for the tea party. And this is another little china, little Czechoslovakian German little jam dish that I put in some blackberry jam. And we'll put that right on top of the scone. And you can put many things on scones. You can put the lemon curd, in England, they often put the wonderful curd cream, they call it. It's a cross between a thick whipping cream and, I don't know, it's just so different, and with strawberries. And they'll put that on the scones. And that's really where strawberry shortcake came from. Okay, so that is something special. Now, today, I told you that next time I was going to show you a picture of Chatsworth House that is in Derbyshire. And this is my little tray, if you can see it up close. That is Chatsworth House. I'm sorry, we're getting kind of a, and it is considered in England the largest privately owned manor house and most elaborate. It is like a palace, and the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire are still there, and it's a generational peerage, which is, you know, they're a Duke and a Duchess, and it is passed down to the eldest son or eldest daughter, I believe, possibly now. And they maintain it, and it's open to the public part of the time. And it is truly phenomenal. And when you drive up, there's acres and acres, I don't know how many miles is how I would evaluate it, of open fields with beautiful sheep and cattle. And they have an entire massive farm, but bigger than a farm, acres. And it sits in the most lovely setting and goes back centuries. The art alone in it and the carving, and it would be priceless. And for some reason, the thing that really stands out to me is the library. I have never seen a library so gorgeous. And floor-to-ceiling books, gold, tapestry, every conceivable, jewels on some of the books, really old, priceless. And they have a beautiful grand piano that I just sat down and played. Now, that wasn't in the library. That was down the hall. And I sang a song, and that was very special. And Chatsworth House is what I had told you last week. If you're familiar with Jane Austen and her famous book, Pride and Prejudice, well, Mr. Darcy is one of the main characters, and he lives in this incredible mansion estate called Pemberley. And when she was writing the book, Pemberley was, in her mind, Chatsworth House. That's what she was imagining. That's how beautiful his house was. And there is another house nearby also that Jane Austen is somehow related to. And it gets so complicated, these histories, I didn't fully understand how that house related. But if you get to go to England, that is something, if you can possibly see it, worth your while. And I know driving, I'll never forget driving through the beautiful, lush green countryside and all the vintage little villages and churches and houses unchanged. They do not tear things down. They preserve everything that can be possibly preserved. And it is called the Peaks, and Peaks, which means little mountains. Now, where we live in America, we have huge mountains, but England doesn't have huge mountains. They have some in Scotland that are definitely a challenge to climb, but not like, Mount Rainier or Mount St. Helens, Mount Hood, Mount Shasta, they're not of that height. So they call this the Peaks, and it is little, we would call little mountains, but it becomes, you stand on a cliff and look out, and the view is fabulous. And the thing that I was so struck with in England, when you look at the size of England and you measure it by miles, I think you can fit most of it in the state of Washington and Oregon. And yet you never feel cramped. London is the only city that I found busy, very intense. Like I've said before, it's more than a city, it's a world. But when you drive on the countryside, so much has been preserved of the green, and you'll drive miles and miles and miles and see nothing but beautiful green countryside, especially going north in Yorkshire, and then, oh my goodness, all over. And I think because it's an island, it has that advantage of water all around it. So it's almost like having a room that has a mirror. It makes it bigger. So it's a lovely place. And I had wanted to mention that when a person goes and visits these houses, you usually go the manor house for the whole day. And they had a beautiful, what they call, we would call it a, well, it's a glass house. And, you know, the first big glass house that was envisioned was Prince Albert. And that was the Crystal Palace. I'm sure you've heard of that. And that was massive. And it was actually like a World's Fair, maybe like the first World's Fair. That would have been in the middle of the 18th century. I'm sorry, the middle of the 19th century, 1800s, middle of the 1800s. And so that was quite phenomenal. And people came from all over. And then this Crystal Palace did a lot of other things later. Like when people build world fairs, they use the buildings for other things. And there was a famous preacher in England named Spurgeon. And he had massive meetings there and used that for his services, thousands and thousands of people. Well, at Chatsworth House, they have a beautiful small glass house out in the garden, and it's considered one of the first. And though everything there is very old, they also keep up, and they are using, you know, some solar panels and things to help it's a greenhouse really, and the gardener uses it, but it's unique. It's a one and only, and one of the first of its kind. And I think that glass of all colors, shapes, forms is beautiful. I love colored glass, and you know, Tiffany glass is so beautiful. And it's interesting because the Tiffany, the man that really developed all the beautiful colored glass, he had been on a tour of Europe, and this is 100 years ago or more, and he had been to all these wonderful cathedrals and saw the stained glass windows, and even in the palaces, the use of this colored glass. And he said, oh, I love that. How do they do it? And so he tried to find out. And do you know the recipe for that was lost in history? And so he went back with scientists and did experiments and tried to develop stained glass. And that's what the Tiffany glass is. He never got the exact formula. He came very close, but it's still out there. Fascinating. Even like the mummies, no one really knows how they did the mummies to preserve them so long. That secret was also lost. So, you know, we're modern, we think we know a lot, but there are a lot of things in history that are still hidden from us. So I think it's important to respect every era. And those cathedrals that we talked about in my other talk, they would take generations to build. the grandfather would perhaps be starting it, and then his son would be continuing it, and then his grandson would be working on it. And they have found in the cathedral, many cathedrals, little secret messages that they wrote, little prayers to God. This was their way of telling the world, God is real, God is alive, and we want to honor him. And the tradition was that in every town and every village, the cathedral had the cross at the top, and it would be the tallest building in the town. And that was symbolic. That was saying, God is ruling above us, and we honor him. And the cross of Christ covers us with his love. And I just love the fact that even in our American towns, the old churches are so beautiful, and the old schools that, if any of them last, are so special. And the old Grange halls, because they tell the story of a community. And of course, we're so young in America compared to the continent or Europe or Middle East, almost anywhere in the world. We are very, very young. And when you consider, particularly on the West Coast and in Alaska, the kind of the pioneer last frontier, the houses that are built basically on virgin land. They're not built on top of anything else, you know? And so it's very special. And we need to recognize that. And I just think that having tea with you is so special. And I look forward to it. I hope you do. And I hope that you have a good week. And always remember, God is there. He wants us to talk to him. He listens. He answers. And he will grant you help. He will give you peace and a deep joy inside. I encourage everyone today, whatever your concern is, whatever your problem is, take time and give it to him. He will help you. It has been so nice to be with you today. I'm going to close now with a little rhyme again. Gratefulness and giving, keys to abundant living. God bless. I will look forward to seeing you next time.